In India, food is served on a round plate, and you have sweet and you have savory and you have spicy, all mixed together on the plate, and it's very much a choose your own adventure. The states in India are just as diverse as the different countries in Europe, the different cultures, the different languages, but this concept of seva, it's ubiquitous through the whole society. Not only provides spiritual support and spiritual nourishment, there's also the physical nourishment. It's a very, very intense experience, having the smoke and the flame and the watching the arati take place, and the bells and the drums, and tens of thousands of people crammed in, all doing this every night of the week. It was something to behold, absolutely. The vibrancy on the streets and the eclectic nature of the people who are there from day to day, and the tourists and everything, that whole melting pot of humanity was something to behold.
Voice aajKal, our medium, your message.
Good day, everyone. My name is Navneet Anand from Voice aajKal, our medium, your message. Today, we are sitting here with Warren Kirby, who has got plenty of experience in clicking wonderful photographs. Recently, he visited India. When I talk about India, he visited Ahmedabad, Delhi, Agra, Gwalior, Orcha, Khajuraho, Varanasi, Mumbai, Nasik, and then back to Sydney. Yes. Warren, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me on. It's a great pleasure.
When was the trip made?
It was done in January, in late January. It was quite important to me that my very first international trip as an MP was to go over into India to see the homeland of so many people who are my constituents in Riverstone, to get an understanding of how people think and why they think in certain ways, and what is the backdrop to which formulated somebody's worldview.
So did somebody from Sydney accompany you as well?
Yeah, I went with the indomitable Harish Velji and Aisha Amjad. They took me over there. The trip itself was organised by Mutu from the temple up on the Shakti temple. Yeah, up on in Altungabi. So he organised the trip for me, and I had some very specific requests, some of which came off, some of which not so much. I really wanted to ride a motorbike while I was over there, but I had shoulder surgery not that long before I left, and so I was unable to ride. But I was very keen on making sure that a large component of the trip was driving. So I've been to countries before where all you see is the inside of a hotel room and then inside of a conference room. And I was quite concerned that in my role as an MP, as soon as people find out that I'm an MP, to sort of isolate me from what the day-to-day life was of people. So it's very important for me to make it a driving trip where we spent a lot of time on the ground and travelling around. And it was also quite important to me to document that in photography. So as you can see in front of us, we got quite a few photographs. In the end, I took about 10,000 frames.
Wow.
Yeah.
10,000.
10,000. So the editing job was a little bit of an effort. But I trained as a photographer. I started my career as a newspaper photographer, and then I moved over into public relations and marketing. But I very much see the world in a visual sense, and I've discovered in my travels over time that if I'm concentrating on I need to photograph this, it means I'm also concentrating on trying to tell a story about what I'm seeing. What is it that I've seen? Is this a normal circumstance? Is this an abnormal circumstance? And so it was very important to me to document that with photography, not just for recollection's sake, but also to make my mind very much in the frame of how is this day-to-day life in India? What does it mean to be somebody growing up on the streets of Ahmedabad or on the streets of Delhi? So it was quite an interesting adventure.
Before I talk any further for the trip, how did you handle the food?
Oh, the food is fine. I was given very, very strict instructions. I was not allowed to eat street food, no street food.
But did you still eat it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, but I'm a big fan of Indian food, so it was not a shock for the system. No cases of Delhi belly, any of that sort of thing. Yeah, touch wood. I actually, one of the things I really love about Indian food is it's so complex in the way that that's created. Herbs and spices are allowed to develop over hours, so you get this really interesting and complex mix. And one of the life tips that I picked up while I was over there, I went over to aajKal in Delhi.
Yes.
And I met with GM over there, and he's one of the most senior swamis in the Swaminarayan group, and he sat me down and he said, "Look, if you want to understand India, one of the best things you can do is think about McDonald's." And it struck me as quite odd. Why would I think about an American fast food chain? And he said, well, so everything comes in a rectangular container. You have your burger in a box, you have your fries in a box, you have your drink in a box. And it's very similar to Western culture broadly, where you have an entree, you have a main, you have a dessert. Everything is laid out in a very specific order. In India, food is served on a round plate. And you have sweet, and you have savoury, and you have spicy, all mixed together on the plate, and it's very much choose your own adventure. And that bleeds all the way through to Indian culture, where people are very much of the opinion that, you know, you don't form strict regimes. Things are very flexible, and that's in fact a necessary way of life in India. And it, as I say, it bleeds right through to the way that people think and the way that people do things. And again, these are the kind of learnings that I was over there to gather. You know, why do people take rules as guidelines? Why do people think the way that they do? And that was just a wonderful insight into how to think about people who come from different areas of India.
Hello. Talking about the traveling by car, food at different places, visiting multiple cities and multiple locations. I'll go through the photos in a moment, but if I have to ask you the most memorable moment that you still cherish out of the whole trip.
That's a really difficult one, but I have to say the place that had the biggest impression on me was Varanasi.
Varanasi.
Yeah. So, you know, we visited many temples and many extraordinary pieces of architecture that in themselves were quite enlightening. The different phases that India has gone through, and the temples that were created by early Hindu right through to being overtaken by the Mughals and then overtaken by the British. And I got a deeper appreciation of geographically where India sits and how it's a fulcrum between Europe and Asia and the Middle East. So, and it's shown through the architecture. But in the case of Varanasi, a city that is estimated to be around about 11,000 years old, and the vibrancy on the streets and the eclectic nature of the people who are there from day to day, and the tourists and everything, that whole melting pot of humanity was something to behold. That's for sure.
Did you get a chance to pick up a cup of tea from the tea stalls on roadside?
I did. Yeah.
That's the most interesting part of the city.
I'm a very big fan of masala chai.
Yeah. The conversations happen there. You know, the intellectuals come and sit and discuss and talk, whatnot, right from the morning till late night before they go home.
Yeah.
Just over a cup of tea.
And, you know, I can't imagine being anywhere else in the world where you can see a disabled beggar literally crawling on all fours down the street with a pan asking people for money, through to the people on the rickshaws pedaling up steep slopes with two people sitting in sometimes having to get off and drag the thing up the hill. Just right across the board, there is extreme wealth and there's extreme poverty. And this was in Mumbai. I know that I'm jumping around a little bit here, but in Mumbai, I stood on a street, and I looked to my right, and there's the world's most expensive real estate, and I looked to my left, and it's the world's largest slum. all of these things combined, it's an extreme experience. I've been to countries that are very, very poor. I've been to countries that are very, very rich. This is the first time where all of that, and not just all of that together, but all of that in such an extreme measure, was quite impactful.
This is the reason we say incredible India.
No question. It is without question incredible. Yeah.
Talking with the photos, I could see a lot of interesting pictures here. Which one is this?
This one, so the very first day that we arrived in Ahmedabad, happened to be the day of the Ram Temple opening. Ram Ayodhya was opening up. Yeah, and there were people dancing on the streets, and there were orange flags everywhere, spontaneous street celebrations and fireworks, and big screens all over the place with Modi addressing the crowd. And as we're driving along, we were heading towards visiting Sidi Sayed Mosque, and just on the side of the road is a girl standing on a high wire with a pole in a park that is it's entirely dirt, and there's games of cricket going on, and it was really indicative of the vibrancy of life right from the get-go. But it was the very first morning of the trip. Yeah. Yeah, this was outside Swami Narayan Temple in Ahmedabad. We went out very, very early in the morning to head to this temple.
So did you recognize some of the vegetables here?
Yeah, of course. We've got herbs, carrots, and cabbage and things like that. But there were street stalls kind of all over the place, and people being opportunistic and parking it right in front of somewhere where they know that thousands of people are just about to go to worship. The reason for this one, I mean, this is maybe not as dramatic as some of the others, but it's a solid silver piece that wraps around one of the columns inside this Swami Narayan temple. Yeah, and I stood there, and for about 20 minutes was a man, and he was hugging, and he was pressing his head against it, and the people, the worshippers who come there, would do laps around inside, and somewhere that you're technically not supposed to take photographs. So I was given a little bit of leeway with being able to do that, but it was quite interesting to me to see people not only in very intimate personal bit of worship, but also to have the Swamis very close by, so people could then go up and talk to them and seek a bit of life advice, or just have a brief conversation before moving on. And religions broadly are very interesting to me, but the different nuances between religions of Hinduism is so much a personal reflection on life, whereas a lot of the Abrahamic religions, it's very much focused on a central person who provides teachings. There's quite a difference in the way people are very, very insular with Hinduism. Of course, there are the teachings that Swami give, but it seems to be much more of a philosophical outlook on life rather than a guidebook on how you should be living your life. And I find that kind of thing fascinating. Yeah, so this is people worshipping the gods. Again, going to a temple at the time that the God calls you rather than a time that the sermon is on. Having the actual living God being inside. The whole concept of giving the God a rest by closing the curtains and making sure that they're dressed appropriately for the day. And this is, the reverence with which the idols are perceived to be the actual God, an actual living God inside the idol, is again quite different to Abrahamic religions, where it's a vessel towards it rather than the spirit of it itself. Cows Oh my goodness, cows. So everywhere you go, there are cows. And quite fascinating that you could be driving down a freeway at 100 kilometres an hour and there is just a group of cows parked in the middle of the freeway. And nobody's moving them on, and you can do that in the country. You can be in the middle of Delhi. You know, I shot quite a few images in Delhi of cows just in and around the streets, and it goes a little bit towards driving style. You know, driving style is very flexible. A lot of people criticise South Asian drivers and Asian drivers more broadly because in Australia we're very strict about road rules. Everything is very, very strict. And even little things like in Australia, to use the horn is a very aggressive manner. In fact, it's against New South Wales road rules to use a horn in any other circumstance but an emergency. So if you toot someone in an Australian context, you're doing something wrong and someone is pulling you up on that. And it you know, can cause people to get quite angry in a car. In India, people use the horn constantly, and it's encouraged.
When you say it's encouraged, on back of the trucks
on the
as
back
well.
of every truck is horn please. You know, there's a sign of horn please, and then I'll let you know whether to go to the left or go to the right to come around me. And if you pay attention, it's a language unto itself. It can mean everything from, excuse me, I've noticed that you're just kind of wandering a bit in your lane. I'm coming through. Please don't wander over to my side because I'm in a bit of a hurry. Right through to get out of my way. It's just a cacophony of noise wherever you go, of horns tooting and carrying on. But the cows, the dogs, the birds, there is a real sanctity of life. It's almost in a Western form we would say live and let live. You know, they have just as much right to be wandering the streets as a human does, and so there's an appreciation of they don't necessarily respond to horns in the same way as a human's going to. So while you're driving along or riding along or however you're moving on the streets, you have to respect cows, but well beyond the whole sanctity of bovine animals within Hinduism.
Looking at this photo,
yeah,
what comes to your mind?
For exactly why I took the photo in the first place. So India is experiencing a monumental transition under the Modi government, where people are being given bank accounts. People are being discouraged from using the cash economy, and so everywhere you go, there are people on the streets, from a stall as small as that man with a dish with various things on it that he could sell, right through to some of the larger stalls that are selling clothing items or whatever. Everybody has a QR code, which is the pay ID to make sure you pay. The system of handing over cash is very much getting pushed aside, and everybody from as I say, the very smallest stall that you can find right through to the large stores, embracing the concept of pay ID and embracing the concept of using technology to tie in with that. This is an image that I took over at Vidal, Swaminarayan Vidal. It's the birthplace of Swaminarayan, and there's a golden temple out the front with spires made of pure gold and tens of thousands of people. Yeah, that's the temple. So right behind that temple, as you may have guessed, I've got a little bit of a curious nature. So I walked around the back and I saw hundreds of predominantly women, all sitting down, all cooking bread to serve the tens of thousands of people that are there. And that experience also fed through to a little bit further on. We spent quite a few hours at Vidal, and they were preparing for a wedding ceremony for 200 people. And these are the people who are not necessarily worshippers. They're just people who couldn't afford to have a wedding of their own. So 200 weddings simultaneously, and every one of the 200 couples was given a bed and a wardrobe and basic cooking appliances. So everything they needed to set up their new life, to give them the best possible start in their new marriage, was provided absolutely free of charge. And there is this philanthropic need, the term seva, where it's
Seva.
making sure that you're
Seva is service.
absolutely, and it bleeds through every portion of society, and as far as I can tell, it crosses all boundaries of culture and religion, and it is just a very deep-seated desire of Indian culture broadly. I'll check myself here because I recognise I keep saying the word India. I've come to realise over time that it's a little bit like saying Europe.
Yeah.
The states in India are just as diverse as the different countries in Europe, the different cultures, the different languages. But this concept of seva, it's ubiquitous through the whole society, and to have a religious organisation not only provide spiritual support and spiritual nourishment, there's also the physical nourishment, and then there is also the establishing people's lives to make sure that they have the best possible chance, despite the fact that whatever circumstances have happened to them up until this point, reach out the hand and make sure that they're being taken care of. And that's something that resonates quite deeply with me. I'll just add to that, while on the one hand, I look at hundreds and hundreds of women all cooking and how beautiful that is to provide that service, it's also for a white boy who grew up in Riverstone, it's absolute potential for disease because it's here, everybody wears gloves and washes their hands, and there's very strict hygiene regulation for when you're handling food. There it's just on a dirt mound out the back of the temple, and
And trust me, nothing happens. Everything goes smooth.
Absolutely, and
Everything goes smooth.
And when you take a moment to think about the machinery behind that, the tens of thousands of people coming to worship, the thousands and thousands of volunteers that have to be working in unison and have to be guided by some level of management, it is truly an extraordinary thing to watch.
I'll make a recommendation to you. In your next trip, you must include Chandigarh, Punjab, and Rajasthan. There are wonderful places to visit. You would love it.
I'm planning on another couple. I have to say that the next trip is actually south.
Right.
So we're going all the way across the southern area from Kerala over to Tamil Nadu and kind of everywhere in between. So it's
Rajasthan and Punjab are more on the northern side of it, so maybe one more trip.
I
insist.
There's no question because I've done a bit of the middle belt and now I want to do the southern belt, but the northern belt and then also heading over into Nepal is
when you talk about religions in India, there are many, but one is cricket.
Cricket, yes, cricket. So we were driving along on the freeway, and I had noticed quite early on that there are spontaneous games of cricket everywhere. It can be a park, it can be in a car park, it can be on the side of the road, as this one was. So this was off the side of a main freeway, and it's wedged in between the freeway and the railway line, and it's just a group of people coming together to have a game of cricket. I've got to say I dive bombed into that.
Oh, did you?
And, I had to face a few balls, and just watching the way that people engage with each other and the world around them is fantastic. And I'm a bit of a fan of cricket.
I found one very, very interesting photo here.
Yeah,
tell me the story behind it.
The massive Rolls Royce. So we were driving around the streets of Old Abnabad, and we had just finished having lunch and visiting Sidi Syed Mosque, and this enormous Rolls Royce just comes rolling down the street, and it was so big it took about 3 goes to get it into the petrol pump. And for me it was one of those things as an indicative of just the breadth of old versus new, poor versus rich, everything mixing in together. You literally never know what you're going to get, what's just around the corner from you. You can have the best laid plans of exactly going to do this, and this, but that's like everything in India, it's a guide. It's not a rule.
One of my favorite.
Yeah, that was in Agra Fort. We went over to Agra Fort, and again, the things like the architecture, not just from the carvings of it, but also one of the things that struck me about Agra Fort was the way it was designed to protect the people from the inside. Twisted entryways, very large gates, what they call kill zones, where people set there to limit incoming armies. And on the way out, there was the monkey sitting up on the wall there, and they in themselves are an interesting blend of reliance on humanity, but don't get too close to me because I will. And as you can see by the expression on his face, he was like, "Oh, okay with you being over there, but don't you take another step closer because I'm just comfortable with this distance. Thank you very much."
How long were you there in India for?
We were only there for about 2.5 weeks, so it was very much a whirlwind tour. We were a little bit compressed between when I was able to get away and when I had to get back for Parliament. And I arrived back in Australia the night before Parliament sat, so I stayed in the city and flew in relatively late at night. And this was Bandichore.
Bandichore.
Yeah, and. We went to Bandichore. Everybody goes to Golden Temple. Everybody.
So when we say Bandichore, did you get to know the history behind it?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that it was important to me because
Gwalior.
Yeah, going into Gwalior and the story of the sixth Guru saving 52 kings before he himself, the implementation of the two sides of Sikhism, between the political side and the religious side, and making sure that force and negotiation are two sides of the same coin. They're necessary to move forward. And while we were there, Aisha, who is a Punjabi speaker, went around and mentioned to somebody that I was a visiting MP. And it turns out, as far as we can tell, I'm the first Australian MP to have ever gone there. So they got quite excited, and this gentleman is one of the most senior people there at Bandichore, and he came out and he showed me around, and we went downstairs and we saw the actual blades and we saw the actual room that the sixth Guru before Bandichore was built on top of it.
So this is from the same place? From the same place,
yeah. So I was doing some architectural stuff, and there were a group of kids, and the willingness to engage with some strange white man walking around with a camera, and people, can you take my photograph? Can you take my photograph? And wanting to get involved. Why are you here? And the curiosity between young and old, east to west, all the way through, was something that was quite fun. It was a lot of fun.
Well, I could see some of the very interesting photographs that you have clicked.
Yeah, so going through Varanasi, it relatively quickly becomes apparent that you have swamis and charlatans. You know, you have everything from people who can genuinely provide you with a deep spiritual enlightenment, and the fact that it is such a sacred place for Hindus to come and offer the ashes into the Ganges. Attended a puja and an arti in the afternoon with on the front row seat to that, and that was just noise and visual overload, everything. It was a very, very intense experience, having the smoke and the flame and the watching the arati take place, and the bells and the drums, and there were just tens of thousands of people crammed in, all doing this every night of the week. It was something to behold, absolutely. Yeah, that was on the river. So we took a little bit of a trip along the river and watching the pyres burning and watching people cleansing themselves in the river. And I've got some shots of somebody offering up their ashes into the river as well. It's again India, the polarity of it, where you have people that are there purely for commercial reasons. Again, that was you can see the pay ID in the corner, and yep.
Look, yes, I didn't notice that, but
Yeah. So a young guy, very keen to, he sort of called me to make sure I got a photo of him. Another, street stall in Varanasi.
looking at
where you
the goat in the background.
Yep. So she's trimming the vegetables for people and holding up a set of scales with, the weight, and while she was trimming it, she's flicking over her shoulder, and there's the goat over the background having a little munch and being part of the whole thing. Yeah, just down the road from her, about another 10 metres down the road, was another lady who had her baby in her lap, and she was feeding the baby at the same time as trying to engage a little bit of commerce. So all of these things blending together is fascinating for me.
Where is this?
That's Sidi Syed Temple,
Sidi
mosque, I should
Syed
say.
Mosque.
In the middle of Ahmedabad. It's a very, very, very old mosque that is still in operation to this day. So we were fortunate enough to get there quite early in the morning, and it was very few people, and we went off and we did a few things, and we had lunch just across the road from it, and came back and saw people. It had filled up with Muslims coming to offer midday prayers. This one was over in Delhi, the first mosque in Delhi, and this not only shows prayer, but it also shows the line of succession for leadership.
Absolute beautiful structure.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. That was in Khajuraho. There is a series of Jain temples. It's a UNESCO World Site. One of the things I really like about this image, and in fact this experience, is from the architectural point of view, the bottom layers are there's nothing on them. They're clean. And then you go up a layer and you see some detail coming in. And then as you progress up, you see humans become created. You see humans in war. You see intimate sexuality running through, heading towards enlightenment, and then heading back into nothingness. So by the time you get to the top of the temple, and it is a architectural and visual representation of the stages of human enlightenment. We start from nothing, we start to gain consciousness, we start to gain strength and intelligence, and we start to see the little death of intimate and very. One of the things. Some of the carvings are quite explicit in terms of how they portray sexuality, but they're also very detailed in as much as one pose in particular that I'm thinking of, where it's a man and woman embraced and they're having sexual relations, but also holding the pose that they're standing in can only be attained by practitioners of yoga, and they're also holding their hands in a symbol. And then on either side of them is a man and a woman engaged in self-pleasure, but looking away in shame, and it's showing a visual representation of the spiritual enlightenment that's gained from shared mutual experience and shared intimacy versus insular and self-pleasure as not being rewarding and not being the same as combining. And then by extension, you also have the difference of, if you are engaged in uplifting other people, you are on the path towards enlightenment rather than engaged in self-pleasure, which is pushing you down, heading you back down the pyramid, not towards the top.
The trip that you had, the way I can imagine that you had fun and loved every moment of it. With the overall trip, what did you gather that you didn't know about India, but you got to know after visiting?
I think the flexibility of rules. The flexibility of rules. So as a result of doing all of this photography, I decided it was probably a good idea to share some of these images. So I've put together a photo exhibition.
The photo exhibition?
Yeah.
Where is it going to happen?
It's going to happen at the Ponds Community Centre.
And when have you planned it for?
So on the 30th of June, we're going to have a day where it's free entry, possibly voluntary donation entry, and then we're having a cocktail party on that evening. And I named it after one of the conversations that I had while I was over there. So I spoke earlier about traffic and what it's like to drive and how one lane can turn into six and horns going on all over the place, and the difference between that and Australia. And I said to the driver, we had a driver, much of this journey was by road, and I said to the driver, what do you need to be aware of? What do you need to have as a good driver in India? I spent much of my career as a car photographer. I've been trained in advanced driving by everything from world rally drivers to Formula One drivers through to instructors, and so I feel like I've got a bit of a handle on what it's like to drive. I said to him, well, what does it take to be a good driver here in India? And he thought about it for a minute. He said, well, first you need a good horn, and then you need good brakes, and most of all you need good luck.
So the horn, the brakes and the luck.
Yeah, so I called the exhibition Good Horn, Good Brakes, Good Luck.
Right. When we say it's going to be a cocktail party, so it'll be buy in wide, or people can buy the tickets?
People can buy tickets, so it's a much broader invite, and I've tried to make it quite cheap for people to be able to come. Obviously, there's a capacity of the room, so there's only a maximum of I think it's about 230 people that can be in the room at any one time. And that's also why we opened up the day for free. So if people don't want to, or they can't afford the money to purchase a ticket, then they can come, they can enjoy the photographs, and they can leave. I've also created 2 calendars to go with it. So one calendar is more around the architectural intricacies of architecture, and the other one is just more about the street scenes and the people who are enjoying day-to-day life. So people have the choice of whatever kind of floats their boat, and that kind of feeds into the theme of choose your own adventure through India.
I'm looking forward to look at those photos that will be there displayed in the exhibition itself. Any of the auctions that will happen?
Yeah, we'll be auctioning off some photographs. So there's an option to buy a large A1 image framed, obviously very expensive because they're very, very expensive to create. So they'll be auctioning off. So what I'll have on all of the images will be a QR code, as a bit of a nod to the concept of Pay ID, and people can scan that code, and that will take them through, and they'll be able to order prints if they wanted to order it as for themselves, just a one-off, or they'll be able to participate in auctions for
the frames,
for the big framed images. Yeah.
Look, thank you so much, Warren Kirby, the member from Riverstone. Visited India once, but it's not the only one trip that you have made. There will be multiple trips coming along the way.
Yes, absolutely. I have every intention of making sure, if every state has a different culture, then it's part of my responsibility to make sure that I see as many of them. If I can get all of them, then that would be good, but as many of them as I possibly can.
Thank you so much. Yes. I had a wonderful chat with Warren Kirby here at the studio of aajKal. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Fiji Times. Be with the times.